They told Ravi it was just for fun. A harmless blind date, a laugh to break the boredom of their expensive lives. She's expecting a CEO, one of them said, trying not to grin too wide. You'll be the surprise. Ravi nodded quietly, pretending the words didn't sting. He had heard worse. Still, when the garage lights dimmed that evening and the smell of oil clung to his clothes, doubts settled into his chest. For a moment, he stood alone beside the worn workbench, listening to the ticking of cooling engines and his own steady breathing. Then he washed his hands, changed into his cleanest shirt, and stepped out into the night. The city looked different when he wasn't racing between jobs. Streetlights shimmered on wet pavement. Cars glided past like silent promises. Ravi walked slower than usual, his cracked shoes tapping softly with each step. He wondered what kind of woman waits for a stranger without knowing his face. He wondered if she would laugh when she saw him. He wondered why he kept walking forward. The restaurant rose before him like a glass dream. Tall windows, soft golden light, silhouettes of people who spoke with effortless ease. The doorman glanced at Ravi, surprised for just a fraction of a second before opening the door. Warm air, rich with music and fine food, wrapped around him. Every sound felt louder in his chest. Then he saw her. She was standing near the window, hands folded, not impatient, not distracted. A simple dress, no glitter, no show. Just quiet confidence. She looked up the moment he approached, as if she had already sensed him. You must be Ravi, she said, smiling first. Yes, he replied, almost startled by how natural it felt to answer. And you must be Anya. Her smile widened. I was hoping you'd come. They Saturday. For a second, neither spoke. The silence wasn't heavy. It was curious, like the pause before a story begins. Ravi noticed how she listened even before he spoke, how her eyes didn't wander. So, she said lightly, what do you fix? Broken things, he replied without thinking. Then he laughed, a little embarrassed. Mostly cars. But people bring in more than engines sometimes. They bring hope. Or panic. Anya leaned in. That sounds important. It feels important, he said. And realized he meant it. Minutes slipped into an hour without effort. He told her about growing up in a single-room house behind the old market, about learning mechanics from a man who barely spoke but taught him everything with patient hands. He told her how he started with borrowed tools and built his garage bolt by bolt. She told him about books she loved, about how she escaped crowded rooms by imagining quiet places. She didn't speak of wealth. She spoke of moments. Ravi forgot to be careful. He forgot to measure his words. He forgot to hold back the parts of himself he usually hid. He felt something unfamiliar, seen, not judged. When the waiter placed the bill on the table, Ravi reached for it at once. Old habits moved faster than thought. Ravi, she said gently. He looked up. My father owns this place. The words didn't sound proud. They sounded like a simple truth. The room shifted around him, as if the air had tilted. The laughter at nearby tables felt distant. He pushed the bill back slowly and stood up. I didn't know, he said softly. I shouldn't have taken your time. Before he could step away, Anya reached out and held his wrist, not tightly, just enough to stop him. I like you, she said. No hesitation. No performance. Just honesty. Ravi sat back down, stunned by the quiet certainty in her voice. Outside the window, the city kept moving, unaware that something had shifted between two strangers at a small table near the light. Unbeknownst to him, from a distant corner of the restaurant, her father had watched the entire evening, not with suspicion, but with a kind of measured curiosity. The night didn't end with fireworks. It ended with a walk outside, with the cool air brushing their faces and the soft glow of street lamps guiding them side by side. They didn't promise anything. They didn't need to. There was enough in the way their steps matched, in the way silence felt complete instead of empty. Ravi returned to his small room above the garage long after midnight. The ceiling fan hummed. The city's distant noise drifted in through the open window. He lay awake, replaying the evening in fragments, her smile, the calm in her voice, the way she said his name. For the first time in years, tomorrow felt wide with possibility instead of heavy with routine. Morning arrived early. Grease-streak hands, familiar tools, the rhythm of work. Customers came and went. Yet something invisible lingered in the air, as though the world had quietly leaned closer to listen. Just before noon, a black luxury car slowed outside the garage. Ravi looked up, unaware that the prank meant to shrink him had already begun to reshape the course of his life. The black luxury car waited outside Ravi's garage like a quiet question. Its polished surface reflected the dust of the street, the hanging wires, the open drain, the ordinary world Ravi belonged to. For a moment, he simply stared at it, a wrench still in his hand, the soft clink of tools and the murmur of engines fading around him. The driver stepped out first, crisp and calm. Then the rear door opened. Anya's father emerged slowly, as if giving the street time to recognize him. His presence didn't demand attention, yet it pulled it naturally. People nearby paused without knowing why. Ravi felt the shift before he understood it. The man walked toward him with steady steps, eyes scanning the garage, not with judgment, but with careful interest. The smell of oil hung in the air. The fan rattled overhead. A scooter coughed to life nearby. Everything Ravi's hands had built stood quietly before the most powerful man he had ever seen up close. "You're Ravi," the man said. "Yes, sir," Ravi replied, setting the wrench down and wiping his hands on a cloth. For a second, neither spoke. The world didn't rush them. It waited. "My daughter spoke about you this morning," the man said. "She spoke clearly." Ravi swallowed. "She's very honest." The man gave a faint nod. "So I've learned." His eyes moved from the cracked floor to the lined shelves of tools, to the half-repaired car on the lift. "You built this place yourself?" "Yes, sir. Bit by bit." "Why?" Ravi didn't answer at once. Then he said, "Because broken things deserve another chance." The man studied him again, longer this time. Something unreadable passed through his expression. "Get cleaned up," he said. "Come with me. I'd like to talk." Inside the car, silence felt different than it had in the restaurant, broader, deeper. The city passed in smooth motion beyond the tinted windows. Ravi had never ridden in something this quiet, this controlled. His heart beat steadily, but his thoughts moved quickly. They stopped at a quiet cafe far from the crowded center. No cameras. No crowd. Just space. Over tea, the CEO spoke first. "You didn't know who she was." "No, sir." "If you had known." "I would have shown the same respect," Ravi said. "And more fear." The man almost smiled at that. "She told me you tried to leave when you learned the truth." "Yes, sir." "Why?" "Because I didn't want her to think I came for what she has instead of who she is." That answer stayed in the air between them. Later that day, Anya arrived at the garage herself. She stepped out of the same black car, but she didn't wait for anyone to open the door. She walked straight to Ravi, her smile bright with something unspoken. "He didn't scare you away, did he?" she asked lightly. Ravi shook his head. "No." He asked questions. Good ones. From that day on, the rhythm of Ravi's life began to widen without breaking. Anya visited often, not as someone passing through his world, but as someone slowly learning its language. She brought coffee and asked about engines. She sat on old crates and listened to stories about customers who paid late but thanked deeply. She learned the names of tools and tried to guess their use. Ravi learned the sound of her laughter in the open street, learned how it changed the atmosphere without effort. The wealthy boys who had planned the prank watched from a distance, confused by how the joke had slipped from their control. No laughter followed Ravi now. Only silence. Weeks passed. Then one evening, Ravi found new equipment waiting inside the garage. Nothing extravagant, only what he had dreamed of owning one day when business would allow. He touched the polished metal carefully, as if it might vanish. Anya stood behind him. "My father didn't buy these," she said. Ravi turned. "He arranged a loan," she continued. "In your name. He said it's not help if it doesn't ask for effort." That night, Ravi worked until his hands trembled with exhaustion, not from pressure, but from purpose. Business changed quietly. Customers who once glanced past him now paused. His work became cleaner, faster, more confident. People began to wait for his hands specifically. The garage no longer felt small. It felt alive. One evening, as they walked together under the dim glow of streetlights, Anya spoke softly. "Do you ever feel like your life took a turn you didn't plan?" Ravi thought for a moment. "Yes. But it didn't turn away from me. It turned toward me." She smiled at that. The CEO watched all this from a distance, not interfering, not controlling. He listened to his daughter differently now. He watched Ravi without suspicion. One afternoon, he returned to the garage alone. "I built my world with numbers," he said. "You built yours with hands. Both take patience." Ravi nodded. My daughter builds hers with trust, the man added. That is the rarest skill of all. Time passed gently. There were no grand announcements, no sudden transformations. Only steady growth. Ravi's garage expanded one extra room at a time. Anya finished a book she had been dreaming of writing. Even the CEO's public image softened, not through speeches, but through the quiet stories people began to share about where his attention now lingered. One late evening, as the sun lowered behind the buildings, Ravi closed the garage shutters and turned to find both Anya and her father waiting outside. The CEO spoke first. Life doesn't always test us with storms. Sometimes it tests us with chances. Ravi listened. I once feared my daughter would be impressed by power, the man continued. Instead, she was moved by patience. Anya stepped forward and took Ravi's hand, not dramatically, but with the ease of something already chosen. In that small street, where engines once drowned out every softer sound, 3 lives aligned without noise. What began as a prank meant to shrink one man had quietly reshaped many. And as the streetlights flickered on, Ravi understood that the future no longer waited far ahead of him. It walked beside him.